7 days of open water, leading us to one small island, and somewhere in between, Christmas. If you're new here, my name is Neal, and I'm traveling the world on a ship called the Peace Boat. It's a Japanese-led voyage all around the globe with people from all around our planet. After Singapore, we had one full week on the open ocean, 7 days at sea, and the Indian Ocean had something to say about that. One day the ship moved up and down so intensely that people had to hold the handrails just to move around the ship. I also had difficulties staying up straight and keeping my balance while navigating around the ship. Many people felt seasick. I also felt this uneasy queasiness in my stomach and in my head, but luckily I managed not to get sick and keep it all in.
When the sea is rough, the ship becomes very quiet. People disappear in their cabins, the corridor is empty, and you realize how small this vessel actually is against that much water. But the sea never stays rough forever, and the next morning it was flat and peaceful again. Life on Peace Boat started to show some structure for me now. Almost daily, I took a Japanese beginners class for English speakers. Japanese has 3 different writing systems: hiragana, katakana, and kanji. Our class was being led by the ship's director and started with pronouncing very basic greetings, introductions, hobbies, and counting. It was difficult, but I also enjoyed the challenge. I decided to try a watercolor painting class and then committed by buying the required gear. Every few days, I would attend a class led by a master Japanese artist. It was mind-blowing to see how fast he was able to paint a beautiful painting. For me, the class was relaxing and enabled me to let out some creativity. As you can see, the schedule on board fills up easily if you let it. During this week, I tried a djembe class, given by a man from Senegal, from the little island of Gorée. I'm not going to claim I was good at it, but it's really fun, sitting in a circle with other passengers, all trying to find the same beat. At the end of the week, there was even a performance by passengers who had attended a few lessons.
And then there were the lectures. Most events on board are given in 4 languages, because we have amazing translators on board: Japanese, English, Chinese, and Korean, making the whole ship feel more inclusive. We had people come on board and speak about their work in Sudan, in Rwanda, in Madagascar, in Cambodia. Some of them have spent decades living in some of the toughest places in the world. NGO leaders, UN directors. It's very inspiring to see the work that they do, but at the same time it's also scary and saddening to see people suffering in these places. One talk was from a former UN director, a man who spent 30 years of his life leading the World Food Programme, a UN agency responsible for feeding people in crisis zones in the world. He said something early in his talk which made me think. He said, "There is enough food. The problem isn't supply. The problem is poverty. People cannot afford to buy the food." One thing which they started to do was, instead of giving people food directly, was giving them some kind of currencies or voucher that they could then use themselves to go and buy the food that they actually want. This gives some initiative and some agency back to the people. Unfortunately, the UN has difficulty solving political problems because 5 countries that won World War II sit on the Security Council with veto power, and they rarely agree. Of course, it's still very important to have the UN where people can come together and actually have dialogue, which is crucial. But it's up to the countries themselves to actually bring solutions.
He also talked about leadership, what it actually looks like in the field when things are falling apart and the rulebook doesn't have the answer. He said, do the right thing versus doing things right. following a rule versus making a call. He gave an example of signing a reconstruction contract without the required 3 quotes, because the situation didn't have time for paperwork. He also mentioned he lost 120 staff members over the 40 years of work. That number shows the risk involved with doing work in conflict zones.
It wasn't all heavy. There was also Christmas.
On December 25th, in the middle of the Indian Ocean, Peace Boat threw a Christmas party. There was a concert, there were games, people dressed up in Christmas outfits, and somehow I ended up presenting about Sinterklaas, the Dutch version of Santa Claus, who comes to the Netherlands from Spain with his boat to give children gifts and candy.
I even had some paper notes with me, the traditional Dutch candy for Sinterklaas, which I could then let people try. I also was interviewed by the ship. They asked various passengers to leave a seasonal greeting to family and friends. So I was put in front of a camera and greeted my friends and family from all over the world for anybody who was watching the channel on the ship. So this is Neal from the Peace Boat, and I would like to wish my friends, my family back in the Netherlands, and people that I met all over the world, Merry Christmas, and already a Happy New Year for 2022. Bye-bye.
We had our first open-air cinema on the deck. We used the outside screen and had chairs set up, and we watched The Greatest Showman under the stars, somewhere in the Indian Ocean. It was a first for me, and I really enjoyed it. And then there were some amazing sunsets. Some nights the sky turned beautifully gold. A burning horizontal bar where the ocean meets the light, surrounded by cloud formations. It's truly stunning. On this stretch of the journey, I finally met my third roommate. Up until now, our cabin had been a 2-person situation, me and the other guy. But then, after we passed Singapore, a guy from Kuala Lumpur, Malaysia showed up with his luggage. 3 people, 1 small cabin, but we made it work. After 7 days at sea, we encountered land, the little island of Mauritius. It has 2 volcanoes and over 1 million people. It's known for sugar, rum, and being the home of the extinct dodo. There was blazing sunshine, the kind of heat that hits you when you step off an air-conditioned ship and you immediately sweat. But what I remember most about Mauritius isn't the heat or the landscape. It's the history that lives underneath all of it. Before we arrived at Mauritius, there was a lecture on board about Mauritius, about colonization, about what the British did after slavery was abolished. When slavery was banned in the British Empire, the plantations still needed labor. So the British took people from India in a system called indentured labor. People were connected to plantations for specific years, doing specific type of work, often with very little freedom. It was called something different than slavery, but it functioned in very similar inhumane ways. The majority of Mauritians today are descendants of those Indian workers. Its culture, its language, its food, it's all shaped by the same history. I joined the Peace Boat tour for Mauritius. We roamed around for the day and passed World Heritage Site Apravasi Ghat, the place where indentured laborers would arrive on Mauritius. The island became the most important sugar colony in the British Empire, at some point responsible for 7% of the worldwide sugar production. Rum is still a common export product for Mauritius, so we got offered a rum tasting as part of the tour. One colonial historic building from the 1850s was maintained very nicely and gave a good impression of how some wealthy people used to live. I kept saying being on this special journey felt so unreal, and it kept being true.
The next day we continue to another tiny remote island. An island where they have a race, crazy race, only attempted by fools. Stay tuned for reunion. I'll see you there.